Welcome to the Accounting Success Podcast. Ian Wellham is a chartered accountant, helping other CPA firms maximize their profit potential and become the most relevant advisor to clients. To learn how you can add value, introduce new revenue streams, and move into high-value advisory services, simply go to www.haydenrock.com. On the podcast, Ian brings together successful accountants and industry thought leaders to share with you how they serve business owners and how you can too. And now, here is your host, Ian Wellham.
Hello and welcome to the Accounting Success Podcast. This is going to be an exciting episode because what we're going to do is today, and by the way folks, you better pin your ears back, we're going to predict the future of the accounting industry. And I know that sounds like a bit of a lofty goal, but I'm confident we're going to pull it off. The reason why is because of my guest today. With us today is Daniel Burrus, the global futurist, business strategist, New York Times best-selling author, and founder and CEO of Burrus Research. I'm so excited to have him as a guest. Welcome, Danny.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be with you.
Well, Dan, we could easily spend an entire show just reciting your credentials, but I'm just going to pick a couple of highlights. First off, Daniel's considered one of the world's leading futurists on global trends and innovation. The New York Times has called him one of the top 3 business gurus in the highest demand as a speaker. He's delivered more than 2,700 keynote speeches worldwide. He's been the subject of several PBS television specials, and he's appeared on CNN, CNBC, Fox Business, and Bloomberg. He's quoted regularly in the Harvard Business Review, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, and of course Forbes. As a business strategist, Daniel's clients include Deloitte, Ernst & Young, KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Fortune 500 companies from AT&T to Microsoft to Xerox, not to mention the U.S. Department of Defense and U.S. Secret Service. I don't know how he has even the time to sneeze, let alone do an interview. But I'm delighted and he's agreed to spend a few minutes with us today. And thank you for taking the time out of your schedule, Daniel.
Oh, it's really my pleasure.
Dan, there's a really great quote from George Burns. He said, "I look to the future because that's where I'm going to spend the rest of my life." But in truth, most of us, we're pretty poor at anticipating and preparing for the future. So could I start by asking you, why does the future take most of us by surprise?
Well, it's interesting. It usually does. In a time period of the 80s, the 90s, and even the early 2000s, change was accelerating, but at a much slower pace. And therefore, you could do your planning, and you wouldn't have to worry about major, giant disruptions changing your world on you almost on a weekly basis. And technology was advancing, but not at the pace it is today. It's all driven by what I would call the 3 digital accelerators, and that is the exponential advances in computing power, in storage, and in bandwidth. Those 3 have reached, because they're exponential. Remember, exponential is 2 becomes 4 becomes 8. So in the beginning of an exponential change, things are slow, but all of a sudden they start jumping and leaping forward. Think of it as if you looked at a curved chart now in your mind, picture a hockey stick. And right now we're about where you'd put your hands on that hockey stick. In other words, the change factor is almost going vertical. So in the past, you didn't have to worry so much about tomorrow because tomorrow looked quite a bit like today. But at this point in time, tomorrow doesn't even look like today. It's changing that fast. And one of the reasons I'm extremely excited to be here with you and to talk to this profession is because we're in a position to bring amazing new value to our clients if we are willing to open our eyes and see the new opportunities for the field of accounting. And my worry is, if we don't, you're going to be struggling increasingly, exponentially, every year.
Wow, that's fantastic. And it's a great way to illustrate it, talking about the hockey stick. Now, everybody's pressed for time. When I'm pressed for time, I normally like to read the Wall Street Journal, but when I'm really stuck for time and I've got a choice of a short blog from you or the Wall Street Journal, I got to be honest, I look at your blogs and articles because, frankly, the journal's telling me yesterday's news while you deliver tomorrow's news, and I think that's a fundamental reason why I'm always interested in those. You have a phrase, I believe it's the visible future. Can you explain to the audience a little bit about what you mean by visible future?
Yes, I think it really cuts to something very important, and that is we live in a world of amazing uncertainty. What's going to happen with the election? What's going to happen with stocks and bonds? What's going to happen with interest rates? What will happen in Europe and Great Britain with all the changes that have just taken place? In a world of amazing uncertainty, you have to ask yourself the opposite question, and that is, am I certain of nothing other than, of course, deaths and taxes? And I would say you can be certain about a lot. Matter of fact, much more than our listeners would think. That's what I call the visible future. Instead of having the future seem so invisible to us because of the high level of uncertainty, why don't we bring some visibility to it? For example, can an astronomer accurately predict in the year 2040, we're going way out that far, in the year 2040 in March, the exact moment we'll have a full moon? And the answer is, well, of course they can. Don't tell me you can't predict the future. We know after summer is what? Fall, followed by winter. And we know when stocks go up, they don't go up forever. They will go down, but guess what? They're going to go back up again. Those are cycles. And there's over 300 known cycles that allows you to predict the future. And by the way, economists use cyclical change as a way of predicting the future. The problem is all of you listening to this right now know that the economists have been increasingly wrong lately. And why is that? Because there's another kind of change that used to be slow, therefore you didn't need to know about it. But today it's happening like crazy. It's changing our world on us. It's changing our customers' needs on us almost on a daily basis. I would call it linear/exponential change. In this case, it's one way. It's not a cycle. Once you get a smartphone, you're not going back to a dumb phone. Once you get people in China parking their bicycle and getting a car, they're not going back to the bike. Once people in India start using refrigeration for their homes, they're not going to all of a sudden say, hey, we don't want refrigeration anymore. In other words, these are one-way linear changes that are not cycles, they are not repeating, but rather represent tremendous problems as well as opportunities that you can see. That's part of that visible future.
Wow, that's very insightful. Now, going back in time a little bit, I believe you gained notoriety first in the 1980s as the first and only technology futurist to accurately identify some 20 technologies that would become driving forces of business and economic change for decades to come. How did that happen?
Well, just not to take too much time on this because I want to bring as much value to our listeners as possible, but I started out teaching biology and physics, so that was my early days. I've started 6 companies over the years. My first company was in experimental aircraft. I had 37 national locations in the first year on that. So out of the 6 companies, 5 of them were profitable in the first year, and 3 of them were national leaders in the first year, probably because I never had a business course. I was a science guy. So I didn't know all the things that you have to do, and that was good because I found ways of making things happen faster. And that's part of what I teach in this anticipatory organization learning system that I put together. And that is, for example, if you focus on the competition, you act like the competition and you tend to end up being like the competition and you end up competing on price. But if instead you don't follow or act or try to copy the competition, you innovate, you jump ahead with the low risk that certainty can bring, you can do amazing things. Now, I've only mentioned that part of my history to say I don't just write books, and I've written 6 books that have done quite well, and I don't just publish articles, and I publish over 100 articles a year. I'm not just a writer. I actually am a business guy who's done this stuff. So I'm sharing it from that context. So back in 1983, I sold 4 of the businesses that I started. I decided to start a research company. I spent a year researching global innovations in all areas of technology, and I came up with what I called the taxonomy of high technology. It was the 20 core technologies that would be shaping the future for decades and decades to come. And by the way, if you look at that original list from 1983, you'll see digital technology, you'll see the cloud and the internet, as well as you'll see genetics, and you'll see fiber optics, and again, all of the key technologies that have been shaping our future. But I also did something else. I came up with how you can get the time frames, and that are those 3 digital accelerators. Again, the exponential rate of change coming from computing, bandwidth, and storage. So putting those together, I was able to, over the years, make literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of accurate predictions. For example, a real quick one, back in 83, I predicted that we would sequence the human gene code in the year 2000. So that was from 83, and it was a 2000 prediction, and of course it was accurate. Just like in my 1993 book, I was talking about we would be doing, I didn't know they would call it an iPhone, but I correctly identified what became the iPhone back in 93. Even in my book in 93, I had a little section, that was Technotrends. In that book, I had a little section called Blockbusters Busted. And if you read what is underneath it, I'm describing Netflix. Now, this isn't meant to tell your readers, gee, Dan is a smart guy, great. That's not why I shared that with you. The reason I'm excited to be on this call with you is because I'm put on the planet to teach. Remember, I told you I started out teaching. And if I'm the only one that can see the future, this is not going to be a good future. I want you to realize how much you can see, how much you can control, how you can use it to shape a better future than your past. Retailers think that the good old days are behind them, the brick and mortar retailers, when in reality, the good old days of brick and mortar are ahead of them. Now, why is Amazon creating hundreds of physical brick and mortar stores? Why are there so many e-commerce companies that are getting into brick and mortar, just as the old brick and mortar guys are getting out? And the answer is they've realized they've got to think different, because if you think different, you act different. So understanding, and now I'm going to introduce a concept to our listeners, and we can talk about this, Ian, and that is when you understand the difference between hard trends, those are the trends that will happen, guaranteed. You can't stop them, but you can see them ahead of time if you know where and how to look, from the soft trends, the ifs and maybes, the things that might happen. So hard trends give you the confidence that certainty can bring to make the changes and to see the disruptions that are coming. Soft trends, I like those as well, by the way, because if you don't like them, you can change them.
Right. Speaking of thinking differently, let me just say that the word disruption, retailing to publishing to travel, financial services, a lot of business news is about industries experiencing disruption. Yet the accounting industry seems especially slow to embrace change. Why do you think that is, Dan?
Well, different disruption, a couple of things on disruption. Number one, disruption does not happen to you once and then that's it. Disruption is kind of like waves at a seashore. They don't just happen once, they continue to happen. You get new waves, new disruptions coming. And as I said, they actually start coming faster. Let me just take one that will happen to us. Because of the advances in technology, every year we will be able to do much more with much less. In other words, we will be able to accomplish more in less time. So what does that mean? That means if you bill by time and materials, every year you're going to be making less. And you know what? That's going to happen to this field, to accounting. If you're billing on time, you're going to end up being able to do things in less time every year because technology is getting so powerful. So I'm not saying you completely eliminate billing on time, but you need to now start learning how to bill on value. And it isn't the old value you used to bring. You see, one of the reasons the accounting field is slow to change is history is where our expertise lies. We look at last year or last 2 years or 3 years financials, and we make sure that they're accurate, and we give you some view of the future based on those, but it's really spent looking at the past. But for us to move this industry, this field, this profession you're in forward, it's important for you right now to take a look at how can I add more value to my clients using my current expertise of analyzing the financials in the past and where we've been, but also giving them new insights as to how to navigate this changing future. Because you have to ask yourself, are you changing as fast as your customers are changing? By the way, hint, no. Are you learning as fast as your customers are having to learn? Well, probably not. And Ian, I'm going to state my biggest worry for everyone right now, and that is you're all busy. We're all busy. As a matter of fact, I can predict when you're going to be the most busiest in 2018, right? This is before tax time. So that's a cycle. That's why you can make those predictions. The trouble is you can busy yourself right out of business today. We're the top 5 executives of General Motors, really busy every day for the 2 years they came to work before they went bankrupt. The answer is, well, yeah. Same thing happened to, by the way, BlackBerry and Blockbuster. And why have we been having so many problems with even big companies like Microsoft and HP and Dell? And the answer is reacting and responding to change, as our profession tends to do, used to work. But now it's not working that well, and it's going to get worse going forward unless we learn a new competency, and I call that the ability to anticipate the changes that are happening before they happen using the hard trend methodology.
So let me jump in on that busyness aspect, Dan, because I think that's really important. I mean, I come across CPAs who seem to wear their busyness like a badge of honor almost, and I don't understand it because in your book, Flash Foresight, which I think most CPAs, all CPAs should read, absolutely. You make the point that executives, like at Blockbuster, were busy right until the point Netflix put them out of business. Could you talk about the dangers of that sort of busy for business sakes? Because I think you were certainly going down that line a moment ago.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in the past, being busy, as you said, that was good. It's being busy is a good thing. But again, today the world is changing so fast on you. Disruption is coming out of nowhere, seemingly. And I'm not worried about the competitors that you can see. I'm worried about the competitors that are the startups that you haven't even seen yet, that have learned to automate your processes. Let's face it, real-time accounting, real-time auditing is already a reality starting to take place. So what is your new value? So instead of just putting out fires and crisis managing, in other words, dealing with the change that is coming from the outside in to us, I would like you to start creating change from the inside out, from inside your organization, whether you're a one person or whether you've got 5 or 10 or 15, however many employees you have, or even if you're working by yourself. If you are just reacting and responding to change, given that we're now in a period of exponential change, remember the hockey stick, you will be falling behind every year. As a matter of fact, there's another thing I want to point out, and that is we're no longer in a period of change. We're in a period of technology-driven transformation. And the difference, I'll just explain very quickly, is when I was a young guy, I could listen to my albums one album per spinning disc that was 33 1/3 size. And so I could listen to rock and roll and all the stuff that I listened to back when I was a kid. Then, as I got older, a change, emphasizing the word change here, came along. I could get it all on a CD, which was one album per smaller spinning disc. And I liked that change, but that was not a transformation. It didn't become a transformation until I got all my music, along with all my photographs and all my videos and access to the world, in my pocket or in your purse. In other words, that smartphone transformed how I listen to music. In that same way, we are transforming over a short period of time, just a few years, how we sell, how we market, how we communicate, how we innovate, how we train, how we educate, how we collaborate, how we pay for things. And every business process will be transformed. Now, that's the hard trend. The soft trend is, will you transform your business processes, or will you cling to the past and be increasingly in trouble every year? Once again, you have a choice. You have a choice.
Yes. And talking about transformation, could you think of a transformational change in the accounting or financial services industries?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I just mentioned one very quickly before, but with what we can do with supercomputers today, what we can do with technology, the ability to provide tax advice with a supercomputer helping us can be quite powerful. I'll just give you an example. Now it's a couple of years ago, I was in Toronto and had a meal that was designed by the Watson supercomputer, IBM's Watson. And to do that, it is a cognitive supercomputer. It has to learn. You don't program it, you teach it, kind of like a child. So here's the question I'll throw to you, Ian, and then I'll tell you the answer. How long did it take Watson, the supercomputer, to not only read over 1,000 cookbooks, but learn everything in the 1,000 cookbooks, as well as learn every book that's ever been written on the sense of smell, very important in food preparation, and every book and all the research that was ever written on taste, so that it could prepare a meal that no human chef would ever create, but it made, I was with 500 people that ate that meal that the supercomputer designed, and it was amazing. It tasted fantastic. How long did it take to learn from those million cookbooks and all those other research books so that they could prepare a meal? I'll give you the answer. That took 1 second.
Wow.
It took one second. Now, how many pages are there in the U.S. tax code? I think there are, 27,000 or something like that?
I think it's over 70,000 now.
Okay, over 70,000 pages. How long would it take Watson to learn everything in the tax code completely? Well, what, about a tenth of a second?
Yeah.
What if you if it did that, and then you had, as an accountant, access to that, would you be a better accountant?
Yes.
Yes. Did you know that IBM has partnered with Apple Computer, and that they have actually mobilized Watson so you can access it on a mobile phone? And did you realize that that all you have to do is get in touch with the Watson guys? They even have said, we don't know all what to do with Watson. If you got any ideas, we'll partner with you. Would that be a good idea? Do you think somebody's going to do that in the field? And the answer is, well, actually, KPMG has already started working with Watson. But they won't be the only ones. You could be too. You see, now will that increasingly happen, or am I giving you a pipe dream? And the answer is, if it can be done, it will be done. If you don't do it, someone else will. So this isn't the time period to be too busy to stick your head up and look and see all the changes that are going on around you. This is the time instead to realize there is a mountain of opportunity for accountants right now in front of you. New opportunity, the ability to bring services and products of high margin to your customers that you never even thought of before that you could do. By the way, if you don't do it, someone else will. So there's the reason why you need to look at this.
I just want to come back to something you mentioned before, the anticipatory organization learning system, which is an amazing online course where you teach that mindset as a way to identify new opportunities and give firms a competitive advantage. In fact, I took the course along with all the other 4 managing partners of Hayden Rock, and I gave it my highest recommendation. We just found it so thought-provoking and actually valuable. Perhaps you could tell the listeners a little bit about the course and the ideas behind it, because I think the audience really needs to hear this.
Well, absolutely. I have been working with large companies and organizations and their top leaders over the years, teaching them how to be anticipatory versus reacting. And by the way, what do you anticipate? You can anticipate disruptions before they happen when you go through the system. You can anticipate problems before you have them. And by the way, helping your customers learn to anticipate problems and pre-solve them before they have them is a great benefit. You can also see game-changing opportunities before your competition and take action on them. So what I did is I put this together in a learning system. It's got 4 modules to it. One of the modules is called Know What's Next. That's where you learn how to separate the hard trends from the soft trends, those certainties from the uncertainties. There's another module on developing opportunities where you learn how to find the opportunities for you and your firm and you personally. Then there's a third module on shaping the future where you learn how to pull it together, kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, find the low-hanging fruit that you can take action on that will give you the biggest benefit. And then there's a final section on how to accelerate success so that you can learn how to skip problems and basically stack the deck in a positive, meaningful, and of course legal way so that you can make success happen faster. And it is an online course, but it's not like a normal course at all. As you know, you've done it. It's kind of, I've had some of my clients describe it as watching a number of really great, highly focused TED Talks. But unlike TED Talks, they have you right after seeing the concept in a video form, which takes about 2 or 3 minutes for each video. What you do is you apply it to your work. And there's a way that we have in there, so you apply it to what you do so that you can actually make each concept come to life. So the learning system is made up of 7 lessons in each module. They have a 3 or 4 minute video describing the concept, and then, as I said, a way for you to apply it to your business immediately. And there's collaborative tools. It's really an amazing system. And I think you know it won a Product of the Year award in January by Accounting Today magazine. And if there's interest in that, you can, you can talk about that more towards the end if you want to. Yeah,
Sure. No, the TED Talks is a great description, and I recall many aspects of it which I found fascinating, and it does make you think differently. Absolutely. Now, also, you hang out and speak to many futurists and thought leaders, not only in the accounting industry, but also finance, law, technology, marketing. What's one idea you heard recently that actually got you excited or caused some intrigue or interest for you?
Well, I come across a lot because, as you said, I work with CEOs and direct reports of Fortune 500 and Fortune 50 companies, as well as like the Department of Defense and so on. And I do work globally, so I do hear a lot. I think the thing that I'm the most excited about, it sounds like technology, but it's the implications that is important. And by the way, the implications will affect our field. And that is what's called the Internet of Things. And that is where we're actually getting machines to talk to other machines. We're getting sensors embedded in concrete, embedded in roads, embedded in parking meters, embedded in hospitals, embedded in paint, embedded it all over the place so that we can make things intelligent. And what that means is that we will be able to not just know where assets are, but we'll be able to audit those assets in real time. And I think one of the areas that I like is we'll be able to do predict and prevent rather than just react and respond. And so by making our cities more intelligent, and let me just give you a quick example because it might sound abstract to everyone right now, but you probably don't realize that 46% of the congestion in every major city, what's it caused by? And the answer is finding a place to park. Wow, didn't know that. But when you do understand that, when you dig out the research and you find out that, you can realize by putting in smart parking, you can eliminate 46% of the congestion without having to build any new lanes or any new highway. Wow. What else could you do? And the answer is, well, frankly, it's quite amazing. So that Internet of Things, which seems kind of abstract and maybe it's too techy to even think about, is actually probably one of the most exciting innovations that's happening right now. And by the way, it's spreading extremely fast and will impact government. It will impact healthcare. It will impact every client that you, meaning whoever's listening to this, all of your clients will be impacted in a short period of time with this. What if you knew a little bit about it? You don't have to be a technologist. Let's face it, you don't have to know the physics of a phone in order to use it, but you have to know it exists and creatively apply it. So all I would like you to do is to become more aware of what exists so that instead of you and your clients getting blindsided by all these changes, you can see them coming ahead of time and turn them into opportunities.
Wow, that's a very graphic example. The parking is really, really perfect example of how we could improve things, as you said, with smart technology rather than building more infrastructure. Let me just change direction slightly. What are some good resources that you'd recommend for CPAs who are actually wanting to, for want of a better phrase, get up to date?
Yes, well, a couple of things. One is on my Burrus, BURRUS.com website. I have a blog that I publish. Of course, I also write a lot of blogs for, as you mentioned, Huffington Post and Harvard Business Review and Wired and so on. But you can access, I write at least once and sometimes twice a week, and you can get them there on the Burrus.com site. That doesn't cost you anything. It's a way to keep up. Secondly, I've got a monthly newsletter that I have one that's free there called Strategic Insights. You could get that. I also have a technology newsletter that I charge for that has been around for almost about 30 years right now. And, you know, for the listeners, Aidan, what I'll do is let anyone who wants to get that newsletter get it at no cost. And that's the Technotrends newsletter. I also have another resource that's called Know What's Next. It's a magazine that I publish. I sell that on Amazon. You know what I'll do is I'll give everyone a digital copy of the last issue who is listening to this recording. So I'm giving you some really good resources. And I think one last one I'll mention is that I'm one of the influencers on LinkedIn. I have, I think, just about 800,000 followers. I'm in like the top 30 in the world. If you're part of LinkedIn, most people are, follow me on there and you'll get a great list of free tools that I offer every week.
That's really an excellent list of resources. And I'm thinking about the young guys who are just going into the accounting profession now. What kind of advice might you throw to those guys who haven't yet got into into a rut, or they're not traditional thinkers? They're brand new, fresh, ready to conquer the world. What advice might you give those guys?
Well, you know what I think I'm going to do is, if you don't mind, I'm going to broaden this out to give advice to the young and the old all at the same time. Old meaning the older. And that is, every generation has a strength and a weakness, and it's good to know those. For example, the older people in the organization that you are part of, what is their strength? And that is wisdom. They've been around for a long time. It's their years and years of experience, and that has high value. Don't underestimate, if you're young, the high value of that wisdom, and that is their long suit. However, for those that are older listening to this, your weakness is the fact that you're older. You don't have the new knowledge that the young people have. You don't have an understanding of technology and what it can do like young people have. Even if you're in the IT department and you're older, frankly, you still don't get it because they grew up with it. They have a view that is different than yours. And of course, if you're young, you don't have that experience. That's your negative. You don't have all that wisdom because you're young. But on the other hand, you do have new knowledge. You do know about technology and things that the older people. So what we need to do is work together in a new way and realize the complementary nature of the strengths and weaknesses that we all have. So if you're young and you're in an organization with some older people, be open-minded, knowing that they have wisdom and you can learn from them, but also speak up because you do have new knowledge. And we are in a time of redefining and reinventing our business model, and they need you. So be bold, speak up. And the way that you could speak up with confidence is to speak in future truths. In other words, speak about the hard trends that are coming, those future certainties that they know will happen. And just like I gave you an example earlier about if you build for time, then predictably, increasingly, you're going to be making less money because we're going to be doing more with less every year. And that future fact, they will not be able to go against because they'll realize, well, you know what, he's right or she's right. So therefore, what do? Well, we can either just make less every year, but you know what, I don't want to do that. So I want to find what are the new high margins that we can start generating? What are the new value propositions? Well, you're going to need young people to help you think that through.
Yes. So as we kind of get towards the end,
Ian, let me also give you the resource. I did say that I would give you some free resources. If they go to Burrus, burrus.com/magazine, they will be able to, if they go to that website, they can then get those resources that I normally charge for free. So I wanted to make sure that we got that out before we finish this interview.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that perhaps you would like to tell the audience, Dan?
Well, I think that, the MACPA, that's the Massachusetts Association of Accounting CPAs, I've worked with them on developing this anticipatory organization learning system, and it's the accounting edition. It's designed for this field. And I know that, they are offering individuals access and to that. So you could go on their website and do a little poking around and probably find how you could get access to that if you're just an individual. So I think it'd be worth it. Also, I really would like to urge you to read Flash Foresight. It's been a New York Times, Wall Street Journal bestseller, and I know that people in this field of accounting have found it very valuable. I think you would as well. So the last thing that I would... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Dan, just let me... It was Maryland, not Massachusetts, right? Maryland...
Yes, indeed. And it's and they also part of what they have is the Business Learning Institute, BLI. So, but you're right, that is correct.
Okay. Obviously our time's just about up, and I got to say, really, I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I'd like to thank Daniel Burrus, futurist, strategist, soothsayer, and founder of Burrus Research, for sharing his insights with us today. Thank you very much, Daniel.
It's been my pleasure.
If you'd like to, if people want to learn more, I think you already gave out the website, but if you wouldn't mind giving it out again so that they can actually look into the Burrus Research and the anticipatory organization.
Yes, it's B as in boy, RRUS.com. And that's where you'll find your resources and all sorts of good things that you can find on my website. And again, if you take that website and put a /magazine after Burrus.com, you'll find a place where you can download those extra resources I talked to you about.
And do they need some sort of code to sign up for the Technotrends?
That's where they can get those resources. They can get it right from that website link. And then for my Strategic Insights newsletter, right on my website, there's a way to get that. So they'll find it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. Okay, folks, there you have it. This is Ian Wellham saying goodbye for now. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the Accounting Success Podcast.